Moses. They have not found his bones. They don't know where he's buried. And Lucifer lost him. Says, where is he? He was so awesome that we gave him this awesome burial. And of course, Lucifer's like, fuck you. And he never ever knew the truth. But let me tell you the truth, okay? Let me back up. So Moses was in the wilderness, thrown off his throne and thrown to the streets like a homeless person. Moses was homeless for a long time because he had to uncivilize himself. Because he was civilized. He was almost a pharaoh, Ra, right? God on earth. But no, they had other work for him. So he went off, tested him, and says, will you kill for your people? Boom, murdered, yes, good job, let's go. That was just, he says. He went off in the wilderness and he was not happy. Go ask a homeless person, are you happy? Do you like yourself? He'll say, no, I miss my family. I miss my luxury. I miss my bed. And then he went off and found the wife and pretended to be happy and had to go off and spread some seeds. But the mountain started to speak. It spit, it spew, and it spoke. And he says, wife, what is that? He said, it's God Almighty in the mountain. He's like, oh. And of course, Moses wondered all his life. He says, why the fuck did you make me from here to there? And his wife says, husband. He says, whoever goes there, he says, does not come back. He says, I'll make you a lunch. You go to the mountain. But he said, wife. He says, husband, you're not happy here. Every day you look at that mountain. Every day I see you walk there in your mind. Go. He says, I tell you, go. He says, thank you, wife. He says, don't tell the children, just go. And he walked to that mountain. And as he got closer to the top, he felt hope. Hope he did not have. No hope. When you're on the streets, where's your hope? And as he got there, he started to feel happiness. He's just like, because he wasn't going to come back. He didn't want to go back to that. And then he got to the mountain and he seen this bush, this burning spirit. And it's the bush. He says, it doesn't burn. He says, Moses, I waited for you. He says, you know me? Because of course I know you. He says, I am you. You take off your sandals. This is holy ground. He says, from one king to another. He says, respect I will give them, sir. And he sat down and he says, let me tell you who I am. I am who I am, he says. He says, I could never tell the people the truth. Because they would start to worship the sun and they'd burn out their eyeballs, thinking like, look at how zealous I am. Look how much, yes, right? Because everyone wants to be better than each other. Because no one wants to be equal. Everyone always wants to rise above the other, don't they? And so he sojourned with God Almighty in the mountain. He told them about his life, and he told them everything. And then he says, Moses, he says, yes, you are the deliverer, that body. We're going to use it to do great things for your people. He says, I don't want to go back there. He goes, that's a shameful place for me. He says, we can either do it two ways. One, I could lead you there, and then eventually we'll just do a switch. Or we just switch now. And you give me that body, and then you go to the good place they call heaven, which is in the next building. He says, well, my wife. He says, his body's not going to die. They won't even know you're gone. I'm going to use your name. I'm not going to change names. Not for this one. I don't want people to know who I am, because what I do is what I do, and I do it for the people. Because you are the deliverer, Moses. You will deliver the people out of their bondage. You will deliver these gifts, and you will deliver them out of their hell. You will deliver the 12 tribes to the promised land that was promised to Abraham. 500 years late, I know, but nonetheless, it's a promise that I will fulfill. He says your children will be like the stars. And what that means is those stars are spirits that utilize you humans. Those stars are the maximum amount of humans that can be utilized. That's why you're like the stars, your children. And they sojourned for a long time. The wife's like, my husband's gone. Long time he was there in the mountain. And finally he says, let's make a switch. They did. He says, but before we switch, Moses, I ask one thing. He says, yes, God Almighty. Just give me your grandchildren. I'm going to train them on the streets to be kings, healers, and rulers. He says, your grandchildren, you're going to hurt them? He says, no, they'll hurt your children. So the switch was made. Moses was gone to the good place, and now God Almighty was inside that body of Moses. God Almighty says, let me do it myself. This is too big a task for anyone else to do. So Moses went down and he went to Egypt. Let's skip a lot, just go right to the point. He went to Egypt and he went to the Pharaoh and says, let my people go. He says, of course not. But Moses, I missed you. He says, I did not miss you. He says, you want to have? He says, no, goodbye. And he left. And he went off to the people. And he went and told them, this, you are the God. He says, no, Pharaoh's God. He says, why? That's because he controls the weather. The man who controls the weather is God. It's the time of their day. And says, let me show you how he fools you to control the weather, people. So show me what he does that's so great that you call him God. He says, here. He says, this is every week. He tells us the weather is going to be like this. He says, yes. And then you speak it and you profess it over and over and over and over for him. He's fooling you. Say the opposite of that and you'll see the weather is going to be just not that. And they started to. They started to say the opposite of what this weather was. And all of a sudden the weather changed. And all of a sudden their crops started being affected, didn't it? It says, oh, there's going to be lots of rain. It's like, no, call for more sun. All of a sudden there's lots of sun. This is, we don't want sun. So the Pharaoh was starting to lose his power. Because the people started to realize, it's like, I guess he has no power in regards to weather. He says, no. Because you have the power, people. And after a while, he started to integrate with his people even more. And he started to eat with them, be one with them, sojourn with them. And then he said, okay, say this. But he had to go ask the Pharaoh first, let my people go. He says, no. He goes see the Pharaoh, and he'd harden his heart, and he'd harden his heart, and he'd harden his heart. He says, no. He says, what, you going to do this? And he would call his own demise. He says, so be it by your own lips, Pharaoh. And he'd leave and he'd go to the people. And he says, do this, say this. And he'd hand out a scroll and he says, go to the people, get them to say this. And they started to. And you, son. And because of that, they controlled everything. He says, call for grasshoppers. Call for this. Call for storms. Destroy their farms. Destroy their crops. And they did. They just started destroying Egypt. Just ripping it apart like we're going to do to the Vatican, the ones who raped their children, their 12 tribes. Same ones. We will not destroy Canada. That's our home. They respected us. We respect them right back. Tit for tat. But Moses started to show them who was God. He says, we are as one. When you work as one and you think as one, you are gods. And they asked him, who are you? He says, a teacher. No one else. He says, I'm here to teach you who you are, what you are, and where we need to go. He says, I'm the deliverer. I'm to deliver you from your bondage, it seems. So finally, I want to explain one thing, though, why he said eat those bitter herbs. He says, here, kill your animals, kill your cows, right? Because he wanted to get rid of that angry spirit. And that was the parasite. So he says, eat your meat and then eat these bitter herbs. And what it did, it was a setup for those parasites. Because on the way out, you do not want these people yelling, we should go back, we should go back. He says, no, they were too busy sick because those parasites were killing themselves inside that body, eating that herb. So for 3 days, those people were sick, the ones who would speak out loud, thinking that they're leaders because they can yell the loudest. No, the one who listens to God is the leader. The grandmother is the authority, and you'll see that it's going to be the one in your community. But for 3 days, they could not speak, and so they were led out right into the wilderness. For one reason, to separate the faithless from the faith. And the ones who are faithless are the ones who want to move back. And he says, separate yourself from them. And he says, earth swallowed them up. Gone. And the people were like, amazed, weren't they? And they started to believe a bit more. Because he never did show his might. Not yet. He showed the people what they could do as one, but then he had to show himself. And as they went further to the mountain, it was only there to write the laws in their heart. That's it. But they separate them. And they separated them accordingly, not by color. Because when they went to Egypt, Joseph went there and sojourned with other bloods, and the bloods were mixed. And that's the reason why the Bible was created, because of this one reason. But I'm ahead of myself. So these mixed bloods was what they wanted, though, because those gifts, when you have mixed bloods, holy motherfucking God, you have monsters. When you mix the First Nations and not First Nations, well, these bloods, is like, wow. In the Bible, it says, be fruitful and multiply, so those gifts can be amazing. And then you have one husband. It's just like, how the hell are you supposed to be multiply and fruitful if you only have one husband? A woman is supposed to have about 5, 10. She has a voracious appetite, doesn't she? You're just like, woman, I cannot. It's like, no, she needs 5 husbands to supply that, right? What's wrong with that? It's love. Moses, part 3. So now I'm going to take to the story of how they took these 12 tribes and how he was able to sneak away. It was only because of the last gift that was delivered. He is the deliverer of the gifts. So to focus on the gifts of the story. So the gifts were handed out to the people. They knew how to stop the sun. That was the last gift. Lucifer was told, the man who can stop the sun is God. So he waited. And all of a sudden this man stops the sun. He goes, there's God. And he was stopped chasing Moses. Left his tent and he went and followed Joshua like a whore to money. Would not leave Joshua alone. For 1 month Moses knew, I have this opportunity to sneak away. And while this was happening, there were orphans who were left over from the parents who did not shut their mouth and had no faith. But it was their children who were going to receive this promise. So these 10-year-old children were selected. Genetics was the main culprit here. So Revelations is now. That is why I speak. Someone just asked. We are in a time of revelations. So these children, 10-year-old children, from each representative for the 12 tribes, 12 boys, 12 girls, were silently snuck away. A caravan left the group, Moses and these 24 children, all by himself. Says no. Now no one to know of it. And there was one individual who helped, a lady, and unfortunately she was killed as soon as it was done, because he did not want any witnesses, right? The first witness told, not the second. So they left, and they sojourned up in Mother Earth. The servant who was helping out God Almighty said, go towards Sodom and Gomorrah. He says yes. And they sojourned for 7 years. These children were not allowed to cross to the land of Canaan, the land of promise, to Abraham, until they were 17-year-olds. Because they were adults when they crossed. He says you don't have little children cross. Because when they cross, all their deeds cannot be of a child. Then they are innocent of what they do. So 17. So 7 years they sojourned on this side. The other side you call Europe. And while they sojourned, Mother Nature taught them how to respect her, how to drink water, how to respect the animals, how to live in this heaven that was created. This place was left empty, and it was for the promise. No persons were allowed to go move in. The seas would push everything back and says, no, this is for the tribes, these children. But as they crossed, the 17-year-olds, they went over to the other side. Canaan, it was called. We call it Canaan. Da. Told them, are you worse? Da. You? Ito? Right? Spanish. They talk backwards. But this people, these tribes, they started to multiply. He says, we need to separate them. He says, so be it. They were separated by tribe accordingly. But there were 2 tribes that were told, you never settle. 2 lines. Line of David and the line of Moses. The servant to royalty. Right now, these 2 tribes, they live in Big River First Nation, Pelican Lake First Nation, and Witchkin Lake First Nation. Those are the royalty lines. One serves the other. Those were the ones that were told, you don't roam. You roam like the animals for faith. because these are the ones who are going to live on the street. Because you're going to have these people without faith and put them on the street, you set them up for danger. So, for many, many years, these tribes sojourned together. And there was a treaty with the animals saying that they're going to eat you for a while. But this treaty is going to end, and there'll be a place and time where they say, no more do you eat your animal, your brother. It's like eating a human. Their body is not meant to eat meat. That was the secret that they told to Sarah. So stop eating that goat, stop eating your brother, and your body will live longer. Their body is meant to live for 1,000 years. Knowledge that they have is going to be that. When they found these tribes, there were people who were 700, 800, 900 years old in there, and they did not know any murder. So when they were being killed, when the sword was going into their body, they didn't understand. They're just like, what's going on? And they're like, these people are so easy to kill because of the gold. They were adorned with gold because that weather was hot. When that weather gets hot in your area, the human, they're going to need that gold because they're going to turn into animals. That gold protects you from the parasites. Getting ahead of myself, I am. But Moses, he sojourned there for a bit and did as he had to do. And he started writing. He says, write. Yes. He wrote 10 scrolls. Scrolls that are going to be found at the right time, at the right place. You say, where? They're going to be found by Mount Nebo, Saskatchewan. They're going to find his scrolls, his bones, and some gold. It will validate everything I say, and it'll be found at the right time. But this body that God Almighty used, it was Moses. Moses, I want to talk about the journey, okay? The 10-year-old children. So here's Moses walking with these 24 children, 12 boys, 12 girls, right? 10-year-olds. And of course, as they get older, they start asking questions. So they're asking God Almighty these questions about sexuality and questions like that. And you're just like, it's like questions you don't want to answer. You're just like, tell you what, let me find someone who will answer that question for you, right? He goes, hold on. And so as they're walking, he sees this mother and her babies, right? And he goes there and he says, can I let these children see your babies? And she says, no. She says, they won't touch them. He says, as long as they don't touch my babies. And mother was just watching them. And then he told the little girls, go play over there. And he gave them something for them to go be interested in, for girls, right? And he said, these little boys, he says, watch those animals. He says, watch those animals, right? Those little boys just watch those little animals and what they do, right? And they're kind of just like, And then as they looked, and they're kind of just looking at each other, he says, be like those animals. You're no better than them. You're equal. Don't eat them. And they said, okay, but watch them. And he did, and all of a sudden they're like, And they're just understood. So Moses didn't have to tell them. He just says, watch the animals, right? Because that's your brother. Watch them. Be like them. And as they watched, they're kind of like, well. And they understood. Nothing had to be said. And that was how it was, right? Be like the animals. If you think you're better than your animal, then you're going to start to eat him. If you think you're better than your brother, then you're going to start to kill him. Be equal to your brother. So after they were done this educational part of their life, it says, go swim, go, right? And he told the girls, go over here. And he went and did things with the girls. He says, go be like the animals together, go. Get that curiosity out of you, right? It has to be as a young boy. And if you do it as an adult, then you become that dirty old man. It was something that he had to do. He says, go be like those animals. And they went. And that was the way. And as the answer that they got, nothing had to be said. They said, okay. And that's how it was. But the girls, they are special. They hold the womb that brings in the spirits, good and bad, depending how you feed your child. If you feed your child dead products, you unfortunately get a dead child, and you have a child that says, fuck you. But if you give them really good food, he says, Mother, I love you. Live foods, live enzymes. Mother Earth says, eat my body, eat my flesh. Mother Earth says that. It's like, eat the ground, drink the water, drink my blood, drink that water that's alive, right? Right now you eat dead food, and your children are dead because of it. I'm not insulting your children or you. I'm just insulting the industry that feeds you dead food. I want to bring life to you. That's it.